There is a question almost no couple ever sits down and actually answers, and not answering it quietly wrecks more relationships than cheating, distance, or money problems ever could. It is not. Do you love me? It is not. Where is this going? It is something much quieter and much more dangerous, because it hides in plain sight inside almost every fight you've ever had about something else. The question is this: in this relationship, what belongs to I and what belongs to we? And by the end of this video, you are going to see why almost every relationship problem you've ever experienced, control, resentment, feeling smothered, feeling distant, feeling like you disappeared somewhere along the way, actually traces back to this one unanswered line. Let's start with the version almost nobody warns you about, because it doesn't look like a problem at first. It looks like love. You meet someone, the chemistry is real, the conversations go late into the night, and somewhere in the excitement, a quiet trade starts happening. One you don't even notice you are making. You stop seeing the friends you used to see every week. You stop doing the hobby that used to be yours alone. Your opinions slowly start sounding like an echo of theirs, not because they demanded it, because merging felt like proof that this was real. At the time, it feels like devotion. It feels romantic, even, like you've finally found someone worth rearranging your whole life around. But here is what is actually happening underneath that feeling. The I is dissolving into the we, and a relationship that runs entirely on we, with no I left standing inside it, doesn't actually create more closeness. It creates two people standing so close together that neither one can move without stepping on the other. Give it time. And one of two things happens. Either you wake up one day and realize you can't remember the last opinion you had that wasn't filtered through them first, or they do. And the moment either person notices the disappearance, the relationship starts to feel less like a partnership and more like a cage with very soft, very loving bars. Now here is the part most advice never tells you, because it is less satisfying, but it is true. The opposite extreme is just as damaging, and it is becoming more common by the year. This is the relationship where I is fiercely protected, almost defended, and we never really gets built at all. Separate finances down to the cent, even years in. Separate vacations, separate friend groups, separate everything, all justified with the same sentence: I just don't want to lose myself. It sounds healthy on the surface, it sounds like independence. But listen closely to that sentence again: I don't want to lose myself. And you'll notice it is not actually about protecting identity, it is about protecting against vulnerability. Because building a real we requires something scarier than losing your name on a hobby or a Friday night plan. It requires letting someone else's life actually affect yours. Their bad day becomes your bad day. Their dream becomes something you now have to make room for. And if no we is ever built, neither person ever has to risk that kind of exposure. So you end up with two people technically in a relationship, sharing a bed, sharing a calendar even, who are quietly running their lives like two solo acts who happen to share a stage. It looks like freedom. It usually feels like loneliness with a relationship status attached to it. So if losing yourself completely is one trap and protecting yourself completely is the other trap, where is the actual answer hiding? Here it is. And I want you to really sit with this one, because it changes how you see every conflict you've ever had about boundaries, time, or space. A healthy relationship isn't I plus I equals we, and it is not we replacing I entirely either. A healthy relationship is two fully formed individuals who choose again and again to build something between them that neither one swallows the other to create. Think of it like two trees planted close together. Healthy trees grow side by side, their roots eventually intertwining underground strong enough that a storm that would knock down one alone can't knock down either of them. Now, that is we. But each tree still has its own canopy, reaching toward its own light, growing in its own shape. That is, the moment one tree starts wrapping itself entirely around the other, climbing it depending on it for structure, instead of growing roots of its own. That is not partnership anymore. That is a vine. And vines don't make trees stronger. Eventually, they choke them. Let me show you what this actually looks like in real life, because the theory is easy. Living, it is where most people get stuck. Picture a woman named Mira. 3 years into her relationship, she gets a job offer in another city. Genuinely exciting, genuinely hers. And in the old version of We, the version where I had quietly disappeared, this is where she would have turned it down without even really discussing it, because the unspoken rule had always been that big decisions happened around him. Not around her own ambitions, but this time, something's different. She brings it to him, not as a decision already made in either direction, but as something they need to actually look at together. He is not thrilled at first. There is a real conversation, even some tension, about what this means for both of them. But neither of them disappears in that conversation. Her ambition doesn't get erased to protect. His feelings about the disruption don't get dismissed to protect her. They sit in the discomfort of two real people with real needs, and they build a decision together that neither of them would have built alone. That, right there, is what a functioning I and a functioning we actually looks like in practice. It is not always comfortable. It is not the fantasy of two people who magically want the exact same thing all the time. It is two people who stay standing as themselves while still building something neither of them could build solo. Now here is the psychological piece almost nobody talks about. And it is the real reason this I versus we question quietly destroys so many relationships before either person even realizes what is happening. Most people never learned how to hold both an I and a we at the same time, because most people didn't grow up watching it modeled well. Maybe you watched a parent disappear into a marriage, losing every trace of who they used to be outside of it. Maybe you watched two parents living like polite roommates, technically together, never really merging into anything. Either way, you didn't just absorb information, you absorbed a template. And without even meaning to, most people walk into adult relationships running whichever template they grew up watching, completely unaware they're even running it. That is why so many arguments about you are too distant or you are too controlling aren't actually about the specific thing being fought over. They're collisions between two different unconscious templates of where I is supposed to end and we is supposed to begin. So here is where this becomes something you can actually use starting today. The relationships that survive long-term aren't the ones who never feel this tension. They're the ones who get specific about it instead of guessing. That means having actual conversations, not vague, abstract ones, but specific ones about which parts of life are sacred, a territory that the other person doesn't get a vote on, and which parts are we territory that genuinely need both of you at the table. Friendships, certain decisions, certain dreams might stay. Finances, major life decisions, how you handle conflict. Those usually need to become we, built together rather than defended separately. And here is the line I want you to actually remember after this video ends. A relationship doesn't need you to disappear to prove you are committed, and it doesn't need you to stay fully separate to prove you are independent. It needs you to keep choosing to show up as yourself again and again while still building something that belongs to both of you. Because the goal was never to lose the I in the we. It was never to protect the I so hard that we never gets a chance to exist either. The goal is two whole people choosing each other again and again without either one having to vanish to make the relationship work. If this made you rethink where the line actually sits in your own relationship, tell me below, what is one thing in your relationship right now that is still I, and one thing that is genuinely become we, I want to hear it. And if you've ever felt like you slowly disappeared inside a relationship without realizing it was happening, that is exactly what the next video is about. So make sure you are subscribed before it goes up.